My name is Igor Urban. For those who don't know me, I work as a territory account manager at Forcepoint for the last 13 years, and I have this lovely 30 minutes today to speak about data protection and why we say ignorance of data is a no excuse, and basically what is the illusion of data protection in the age of AI. I had this presentation 2 weeks ago in Slovakia, and it was very funny because I came to the stage and the slide I saw was not my presentation. Actually, it was my presentation, but a template of a different presentation, an internal one. A blank template, no numbers, no confident information. And what can be a better start to speak about data protection than showing real life situation from the real life presentation? Having a wrong file, which was just because someone put the wrong attachment to the email. That someone was me. The funny thing was, send us the presentation week before the event so we can check it. Guess who opened it? No one. So, of course, the DLP says it's fine because it was empty, but my surprise when I came to the stage and I saw Spring QBR. And that's just a presentation starting in a very funny moment, but imagine that would be a different file. Instead of sending the presentation, I would really send out not the template, but the real quarter business review filled up with all our attainments, the biggest deals, wins, losts, and blah, blah. It would be quite a disaster, right? Especially presenting in front of everyone. So that time I said I can easily skip the first slide, why we speak about importance of protecting the data. These numbers, I'm not sure if you can see it, it's quite small, but basically they are showing the average cost of a data leakage. It's not our numbers. Those numbers are coming from IBM. I have 3 different links which I can share with you if you want to get more insights and more details about this. But basically you can see that only in the United States, Canada, and Japan, the number was going down. Why it was going down? Because the number of the incidents is not less, but the average cost is smaller because the breach was also happening to smaller companies. So what that number is, that's the number of the cost. Like, what kind of technology do I have to know that my data is leaking? What is the cost for my communication to the market, to the partners, to the board, to the stock, and so on, that I have such a data leakage? What is the cost of fixing that issue? How much people, how much technology? What is the reputation cost? And what is the cost of fixing it? To bring the regulations, to bring the paper processes, and to bring the technology to not have such a issue again. So this is everything which is basically covered in the average cost, and it's really like a huge one. Basically, IBM says it's almost up to 5 million, which is a huge number. But as I said, it all includes all these components of the price, to be set that way. Unfortunately, there are still a lot of managers, not the managers of cybersecurity, but the managers in the boards, who don't care about the previous one. The only motivation they are willing to listen to is the compliance. So for them, of course, ISO regulations, NIS, DORA, those are the only things when they can hear, okay, we can get penalty, we can get fees. We need to do it. That's the worst motivation you can have. Unfortunately, still a lot of managers have only this motivation. It's sad, but that's it. What basically changed the approach more than the digital transformation? If you remember, before the COVID times, we all were speaking about digital transformation. It's definitely AI. I was unfortunately not listening to the presentations before me, but I'm not sure if there was any presentation not mentioning AI. Was any presentation without saying AI at least once? I'm not sure. If you don't have AI in your presentation, it's not sexy. We had it before, but we called it machine learning. So we renamed machine learning to AI. Okay, but why AI is such a big thing? Of course, I will speak about Copilot and ChatGPT on the later slides and how we can see it as a new vector of basically leaking the data. But what is also at least same important is that these AI tools are basically giving a very easy access to almost everyone to become an average hacker. Or I would say an average student can become better than the average hacker because he's got the tools to write phishing campaigns, malware codes, whatever. It's not just like my kids, you know, if the train starts from the city A at 5 o'clock, when he meets the train from city B. I was basically doing some homeworks using ChatGPT. It was not always working well. But the thing is, I have twins. Those who know me, they know because I'm always saying, if you're in security, you need to have kids in high availability. My cluster, unfortunately, is active radioactive, so it's a very demanding one. But what I wanted to say, 13 years old using AI tools. Imagine what they will be using when they be 20, 25, starting to work in companies like yours. So there is definitely a need how to basically manage the AI. And of course, one of the, let's say, disadvantage is that we can see articles like this. What's the Forcepoint, let's say, approach to data protection if we speak about all the stuff I was mentioning? In the past, we will basically, has a laser, okay. In the past, basically, we were focusing on these two, protect and monitor, which we can say it's a real-time control. What we basically were leaving to the customer was these first three steps. Discover, classify, and prioritize. Of course, how many of you have been through some DLP implementation? One. Wow, there's a lot of space for us. Those who've been through, the question is, what is your sensitive data you want to protect? And what's the most common answer? Everything. It's useless. It's not even working. But basically, the biggest pain was not to implement the technology itself or set up the policies. The biggest pain was how to discover, how to classify, and how to prioritize the data. Because basically, what is still standing is, where are the data, what kind of data we consider as sensitive, who has access, and how we can basically manage it. And this is bringing us to the point where we say data security everywhere consists from three parts. As I said, it's covered on my screen because I have a timer there, but it's not covered on your screen. We were speaking for the last 15 years about the DLP, the data in motion. Motion means I'm copying to clipboard, sending in the email, like I did my presentation, or do some other movements. But what we need to understand is what are the data in the rest. And then, what are the data in use? By use, I'm not meaning use like I'm copying it, I'm moving it, putting in the email, but by use, I mean I'm editing the file. I'm basically adding some context to the file, adding more slides to my presentation, adding some numbers to Excel, whatever. So these are the three parts which need to come together to basically give us the whole picture. And I will speak about these three parts in a while. Let's start with the DLP. As I said, this is something we basically are selling for 15 years. What is a slight change, but very important, is this very small piece of the picture called cloud. Because basically, most of our deployed customers have absolutely fine-tuned the policies and the solution to have a very decent data protection on-prem. But today, the way how we are working is totally different. It's really in the cloud. So I have like public customers having on a meeting using Teams saying, oh, no, we are not using cloud. This is said on the Teams meeting. We are not using cloud. So basically our job is to somehow explain them what basically the cloud is. And believe me, it's one of the most used vector for cooperation today. So it's great that we have a fantastic DLP, and this slide, not slide, but this picture, it's a new one, but basically the picture itself, it's a new graphic, but the picture itself is 15 years old. And it's still valid. We need to know what I said. Who is accessing the data, what data, where the data is stored, how is basically moved, and what actions can I do. And we can speak a lot about how the DLP basically differs from each other. Means like, okay, if I have a, let's call it simple or light DLP or stupid DLP. Okay, we can catch some keywords, some regulations, regular expressions, file types, and so on. But if you are speaking about an enterprise class DLP, it's ending up with something like fingerprinting and that machine learning, which we now call AI. So there is a vendor, which I don't want to mention, which is now very heavily offering DLP solution. DLP solution which you bring offline and it's not working. DLP solution when you use one zip and it's not working. And what's the biggest fun? To update the policy takes only up 9+ hours. So if you are tuning the policy, you need to do 3 iterations, it's only 2 days. If we would have such a solution, I would be kicked off from the meeting at the first meeting we will have. But this is why I'm saying there are DLPs and DLPs in place. But DLP is basically, as I said, something which we have for 15 years. The basic information is this cloud. I don't want to have, let's say, more time on it. Where I want to spend more time is basically why I named my presentation that the data ignorance is no excuse. How well do you understand your data? And now think of your organization, whatever type of organization you are in, public, finance, utility, commercial, whatever. Just think of it from your CISO perspective, what kind of data you have and what you know about the data. What's its retention? What's the sharing? Is it overshared or not? Do we have duplications? What's the access management for those data? What's the sovereignty? It's a data related to IT, to compliance, to legal. Who's basically responsible for the data? We have a customer in Czech Republic. They have a share file. I'm really struggling how to name it in English. In Czech, it's like hromada, like a pile. They call it a pile because they have a couple of terabytes, which they are afraid to touch. They have no idea what's in it. Just know, don't touch it, because we have no idea if we delete it or do whatever, no one knows what will happen. Terabytes of such a data. So to understand your data is a key element if you want to think about how to protect the data. And this is where technology was not able to help before that much. This is why basically companies like yours hire the big companies like advisors, system integrators, KPMG, Ernst & Young, Pricewaterhouse, or local system integrators, to do them this basically checks, audits, however you call it, data classification project to know what kind of data we have, who is creating it, how we store it, and so on. Today, what is the change? Technology, sorry for that, using the AI, can help in this phase. So if I should use one slide, what's DSPM about? Or DSPM, I forgot to tell you, it's data security posture management. It's visibility where we have the data and who has access to those data. And this is key, because then we can identify and classify the risks, and we can manage it to setting up a proper security controls. And then we have a different use cases, like the sensitive data discovery itself. One thing, this is not discovering data like I have my endpoint and I want to discover the data on the endpoints. We speak about basically SharePoints on-prem or cloud, but not the endpoints, right? That can be done with the discovery on the DLP itself. So this is what we need to do. The question is how? And this discovery classification, let's say we speak about the personal ID number. So basically, we have 4 things we will do with this one piece of a single data. We need to identify it. We know it's a personal ID number. That's the identification. What's the category? Probably it's gonna be GDPR. What's the classification? Probably sensitive, definitely not public, depends on organization. And then what's the labeling? Let's say personal. So we have one single type of data, and we can give them 4 different views how we basically will manage this data. And this is done automatically by the DSPM using the AI. What does it mean using the AI? I have my colleague, probably still on the booth, Mirek Bajgar, my SE. And if you want to go deep in this discussion, just stand by at the table with the label Forcepoint and ask Mirek, I want to know more about this thing, how DSPM is working. But basically, using one slide, it's using an AI mesh. So what is this AI mesh? It's a small language model. So those of you who are familiar with the, let's say, ChatGPT or the other AI tools, those are large language models. We use small language model. Why? Because we need to have classification which is fast. Fast enough to not basically slow down the processes or the business or do any unwanted things in IT. We need to lower the TCO. Lowering TCO, I'm not meaning that this thing is cheap. It's definitely not expensive. But lowering TCO means also that we need to have a language model which can be run on regular servers with the regular CPUs, regular memory, and you don't need any quantum, I don't know, heavy IT environment to be able to run such a solution. Then the model needs to be trainable. So we need to know how to train, what the system can learn, what he should not learn. I will speak about that later. And of course, the last thing is, it's not a black box. If it says something is this category, you need to have an explanation why, based on what the system decided that it's this or this category. Now, what's an add-on to DSPM? And if you remember my slide where I was showing that it's 3 components, we discussed the DLP, we discussed the DSPM, and then we have this DDR. So let me go back. And what is this DDR? So data detection and response is an add-on for the DSPM. It's not able to work without DSPM. And what it basically does is monitoring the changes of the file. So, as I said, we do discovery file, but not on the endpoints, but on the, let's say, storages, local, on-prem. We can classify it. So far, it sounds like DSPM, right? I use probably the other slide. What is the difference is, the DSPM is basically scheduled somehow. Run it once a day, once a week, bi-weekly, 2 times in the month, whatever. So I have a SharePoint with my, let's say, agreements. The DSPM runs a scan and says, okay, within those couple of terabytes data, I found these files, this category, and so on and so on. This is the labeling, this is what I see. But you are working with those files. And you can have a presentation like this, which basically is public. What would happen if I would add a couple of, let's say, internal slides about competition, about pricing, about roadmap, or some data which is not basically public anymore, and of course the file itself is not public anymore then. The DSPM doesn't have the information. It did its scan, put the label. This is where the DDR comes in and says, okay, this file was accessed by Igor, was changed, so the classification needs to be changed. Therefore, this will be under different policy from now. And of course, if we have DLP in place, okay, I have more controls because I know this file is suddenly not public anymore, but it's in a different classification label. So this is basically why the DDR is important. Is this for all companies? Probably not. For some companies, it's enough to have DSPM only. But for some companies, this DDR is basically a very valuable thing. I said I will spend some time on Copilot and ChatGPT and why. Has anyone implemented Copilot in your organization? The same amount of people who has DLP. So both Microsoft has some space and also us. Okay. Basically, the key element for Copilot, because Microsoft is really heavily pushing it, is it's a wonderful tool. But as an AI in general, it's a good helper, but also a very tricky thing. If you do not limit what basically can Copilot access, then it can learn everything you have access to. And this is again mentioned not by us, but from Microsoft directly. So there are good things and there are some bad things. Microsoft itself says it has some limitations, let's call it. So they by themselves, and believe me, they know because they experience all these deployments, there is a huge number of misconfigured deployments of Copilot. Meaning we have heavily overshared files. And also the access management is basically, let's say, a disaster. So in that green box, what they say, 1% of permissions granted are actually used. That's what says Microsoft itself. I see how now you are thinking, who can access your data in your organization, right? So now imagine I'm preparing a presentation. I have, by mistake, by misconfiguration, the access to HR. I have access to payrolls, and I will put a simple question to Copilot. What is the average salary of a member of the board? Copilot is more than happy to give me the information once he has access to it, and it's enough to have you access to it. And if we know that it's really in a situation like this, then it's a quite funny thing, huh? We've been through some implementation of DLP, a simple DLP, many years ago, and maybe some of you already heard the stories because I like it to say it every time. The lady was printing out some payrolls, unfortunately on the printer on the wrong floor. So till she ran to the printer, old friendships disappeared and new friendships were established, right, in the company. Imagine Copilot can bring you this information within a click. So you need to really take care what should be the limitation of the AI, and this is where the DSPM can help. Because you will have the visibility of what the data is stored where, and what's more important, who has access to it, and what's the classification. And once it's classified correctly, you can say, Copilot, just ignore this thing. Just don't even learn it. Or if you learn it, you can give these results only to a proper group of people. The next one is ChatGPT. I'm focusing enterprise, not the one on my phone or on the phone of my kids using for those homeworks, but basically the same thing. How do you know if you have ChatGPT Enterprise? Who in the company is using it? What kind of prompts they are asking? What is the most frequently asked questions for the ChatGPT in enterprise environment. What files basically are uploaded? And then, of course, what are the risks and sovereignty issues? Very similar stuff. Anyone using ChatGPT Enterprise? The same with Copilot? You have both? Wow. I will speak to you later. No, I'm really curious how it works together. So basically, maybe it's a little bit confusing which solution use for which scenario. DLP, DSPM, DDR. So we have couple of use cases, and my goal is not to go through them and read it. Why I put this slide on the presentation is that I guess Kliko will provide you the presentation. If not, you can reach out to me or to anyone from Forcepoint, basically me. And I can give you the presentation and you can go through these use cases. Plus, I can give you some qualifying questions which you can maybe ask your managers to somehow start the discussion if they are aware of these risks and what it brings on the table. So you can basically speak about it. The slide I had to put in, but I don't like basically, not the slide itself, not the context, but I just don't like these extra commercial slides, is why we are different than the others. The slide I put there is basically from 2 months ago, I guess. Is there March 2025. This is just to illustrate you where Forcepoint is in terms of DLP or data protection. Because if we speak about data protection, as you see, it's not DLP only these days. The good news, this was the last slide of my presentation. I still have 3 minutes left, so I want to thank you all for coming to this session. I wish you to have a wonderful conference. Thanks for your attention, and have a rest when this is over, because I will. Thank you very much.